Do you ever get the feeling that your headlamp seems to get dimmer after a while? Well, that's not just your mind playing tricks on you. Many high-output headlamps begin to dim within just the first few minutes, and there's a very good reason why. But unfortunately, the marketing behind how these headlamps are sold tends to obscure this reality. And the headline ratings used to sell headlamps often paint an incomplete picture, and sometimes a very misleading one. So in this video, I want to explain why it is that headlamps get dimmer over time, and why the numbers used to sell them don't tell the full story, and why that headlamp that you bought probably doesn't stay anywhere near its advertised output. The testing standards that most companies follow require that a headlamp's brightness be measured within the first 30 to 120 seconds of turning the device on. That captures the headlamp near its maximum output when the battery is fully charged and the LED is still cold. But the output of a headlamp is more accurately represented as a curve, with an initial peak, followed by a plateau, and then a gradual decrease. And this is where most users get misled. It's likely that super bright headlamp you bought, boasting impressive lumens, doesn't hold that brightness for anywhere close to as long as you thought. And to be clear, this isn't something that every company is trying to hide. In fact, some manufacturers publish exactly the information you need, what are called output over time graphs. You just need to know where to look. Both Nitecore and Phoenix, two brands that I typically use, provide these graphs for most, if not all, of the headlamps that they sell. Instead of just a single headline number, you can see exactly how long it holds a given brightness for and when it steps down. The problem is that most people don't even realize these charts exist or just don't know how to read them. Let's take a look at an example from Nitecore, the UT27, which is a lightweight headlamp designed for trail running, rated for up to 800 lumens. Now this has a listed runtime of 2.5 hours in turbo mode, but if you look closer at the graph in the manual, you'll see that this begins to drop off pretty much immediately to below 500 lumens after about 25 minutes, and down to closer to 350 lumens after around 2 hours before shutting down completely. They even say in their marketing that turbo mode is really only suitable for short-range night navigation and rapid recognition of terrain and markers. On high, the chart says it will last for 3.5 hours at 500 lumens. But again, looking at the graph, you'll see that by the 2-hour mark, the output will have dropped to below 300 lumens. The only really sustainable output is on low at 100 lumens, which the chart says it can sustain for 14.5 hours. And sure enough, the graph shows that it only drops by maybe 15% over time. As a headlamp heats up, its electronics begin to reduce power to prevent overheating. And that's why you often see brightness begin to start dropping within just the first few minutes of use. This is why turbo modes start to dim so quickly, even with plenty of battery left. So turbo and even high modes should be taken with a grain of salt when comparing headlamps. Turbo in particular is really just meant to be used for short bursts, say if you're off course and maybe briefly searching for a flag way up ahead during a race. I think the medium mode on most headlamps is a much better basis for comparison. Now there are exceptions. Some premium headlamps like these from Moonlight are designed to prioritize a sustained output over a headline brightness. Rather than chasing the biggest lumen number, they'll start at a lower level that they can maintain much more consistently. And they often achieve this with larger batteries, better thermal management, or with other design trade-offs. But the downside is that they're typically much heavier and considerably more expensive. Even the Phoenix HM65RT, which I recommend all the time, doesn't come anywhere close to sustaining its full maximum output of 1600 lumens for very long. And Phoenix is even more upfront about this. They publish their graphs right on the website for each headlamp, not just in the user manual. On the graph for this headlamp, you can see that the output on maximum drops to below about 40%, to roughly 600 lumens after just a few minutes. But I typically run it in medium mode, which starts at around 400 lumens, so 25% of that maximum of 1600, and then gradually steps down to around 160 lumens by about 10 hours, which is enough to get me through an entire night in a 100-miler. And if I want more light for a shorter period, maybe on more technical terrain, or when I'm just out for an evening run, I'll use it at around 320 lumens, which will last about 5 hours. That's the real story these graphs will tell. Not how bright a headlamp can get, but how bright that it can stay and for how long. So the question is, how can you find these output over time graphs? Well, as I said, when it comes to Phoenix, they publish these right on their website. For Nitecore, you'll need to download the product manual, and you should find a chart there for most of their headlamps, all but the ultralight ones for some reason. But when it comes to Petzl, well, you're out of luck. They don't seem to publish this information anywhere for any of their headlamps, which is disappointing. The premium brand that I mentioned that does claim to hold its brightness ratings for the entire stated duration, Moonlight, don't make these publicly available either. Although I was able to get this information directly from the brand. I actually tested 2 of those headlamps along with a handful from other brands like Phoenix and Nitecore using a lux meter, and I can confirm that these graphs do seem to be fairly accurate for the brands that make them available. So the next time that you're shopping for a headlamp, don't just look at that maximum lumen rating. Look for an output graph, because that's the real story, not how bright a headlamp can get, but how bright it can stay. But once you understand these output graphs, there's another layer to headlamp performance that you'll want to understand, because brightness is only one part of what determines how well that you'll actually see on the trail. But that's a topic for another video.